Hello, welcome to Direct Joy. Happy lunchtime, or whenever you happen to be watching this. Welcome to Direct Joy. My name is Cherie Joy, and I am a psychotherapeutic counsellor, a psychologist, and a mum of 3. I am, a fiance, and I have loads of labels and tags, and this is Direct Joy, basically. So this is a really important thing that I started doing nearly a year ago. It was really important to me, and I think it's really important to you guys. Everyone shows up and watches it. It is some mental health and emotional well-being support, some of which we don't get from kind of mainstream. It's not that it's not mainstream stuff, because it is. A lot of it is. It's me showing up in my work capacity with my professional, clinical, and also personal experiences of working with emotional and mental health. And I get a lot of questions into my inbox. I get a lot of questions, and I love it. I absolutely love it, but I can't necessarily answer them all. And unless you're working with me one-to-one, which can be costly, you don't get the benefit of that. So I figured if I did a live, which feels like a really brave thing for me to do, I would be able to share the answer to some of those questions with you guys. And that's where it started. And so now every week there tends to be a topic which I show up and I talk about, with sometimes a lot of prep and sometimes not very much at all. So hello to everybody watching. Welcome to Direct Joy. If this is your first time here, welcome. If it's something that you've showed up and watched me forever, welcome too. So where are we at today? Motivation, boredom. It's a tricky one, isn't it? You know, going into February this morning, there's more light. What is kind of how it's hard to stay motivated. It's hard to get out of the boring zone, isn't it? That zone of boredom. And I really wanted to talk about that because I think it affects us all, especially moving into February, which is really interesting because that's a contradiction, isn't it? You know, there's more light. We're seeing the beginning of more light and the beginnings of spring. And actually there is like this kind of that despair, that whether you've got anything going on or not, there still feels like February is that month of trudgery, isn't it? And that's a generalisation. So I want to pull that apart a little bit. What is going on? And I think it's really important for me to say from the offset that I see motivation as such a unique thing. It's very unique and also very seasonal with the seasons, but also very seasonal for us, very much like it changes with our years, it changes with our hormones, it changes with our family lives, it changes with so many different things. There's kind of not many rhyme nor reason. So I think it's an important regular check-in for us to have with, what's going on. But first off, before we go there, let's start with, where did this come from, this Direct Joy? I'm starting to give a little bit of a history, and I think that's really, really cool because it's nice to know that we're all together, this community of who we are, especially online, because that can be quite a weird place to be in when we come together, and we're getting very used to it, aren't we? We've been doing it for long enough. But just knowing that we're watching together and that others will be watching at different points during the day and different points during the week and different points that continue to go through. Some people say to me, I watched the Direct Joy and blah blah blah, and I'm like, I don't remember that one, which is so interesting. So I then rewatch it and I'm like, oh wow, and that fuels another Direct Joy. It's really interesting how we see these kind of cyclical patterns happen. So this Direct Joy, I'm reading a book and I can't stop reading it because it's not a very long book, but it's called Call Me Red, and it's by a lady called Hannah who has bright red hair, and she is a shepherdess, and I love it. I absolutely love it. You learn all about lambing and collie dogs, and it really, really appeals to that little girl in me that just wants to be a shepherdess. And so it's a very creative space for me to think about that, because that's not what I do. But actually being an ecotherapist, I would love to do that. But actually that then took me to a place of, well, it's now, yesterday today marks many things in calendars of different religions, different types of people, different calendars. But one of them, which is going to be really important to Call Me Red and Hannah and many farmers, is that it marks the beginning of the lambing season. And that is just awesome. For me, that just brings me so much joy. We get to go and see the lambs, and soon lambing season is going to start. How many pregnant babies, how many new babies, and just how much newness. And spring we see more new human babies too. And I think it's really, really awesome, all this newness, new babies, new lambs, new spring, new hope, new joy, new seedlings coming. And but also I'm not there. That's not happening for me. I don't feel particularly motivated. I'm not gonna become a farmer. And and so from this sense of joy comes also this sense of despair, because that's not where I'm at, right? And I'm not having new babies, and what am I birthing? What am I? And so where do we go to with that? Where do we really go to? Is it a place of, it's wonderful, it's wonderful, it's wonderful, it's new? Well, maybe when you go and see the lambing, but that's not every day, right? And actually the everyday of that is bloody hard work, I can tell you. She writes about it in her book. And I'm sure you can imagine. So that then takes me to a place, well, where am I really at? And I'm not particularly motivated. We talk about spring cleaning. I haven't cleaned my windows. I don't know about you. And if you have, great, awesome. But do I really feel motivated to do that? No, not particularly. And so what is that spring cleaning thing about? Because that then brings, for me, extra judgment of where I'm not at. Okay, then I'm down again. And interestingly, that place tends to bring up, for all of us, quite a boring place, quite a open, not much to do. So I can describe boredom for you, but I think you know what boredom feels like for you. So what is really in that place of boredom? I remember as a child being told that boredom, go be bored. Well, actually, what my mum said was go play with the traffic, which is how I learnt sarcasm at such a young age. But actually, what is boredom? What did you do as a kid when you were bored? What do you do now when you're bored? We got up to some awesome things in my family. Some absolutely epically awesome memories come from those boring, rainy, shiny, rubbishy days. Nature abhors a vacuum. It is the invitation. The fallow field, the seedlings ready to spark through. What really comes of boredom? What creativity comes from a blank canvas? From an empty piece of paper? Thank you very much to Athena, who said you want to see what style I'm wearing this week. I deliberately chose yellow today because yellow for me, yellow, silver and the greens, what is that about? That springtime really, but I do sometimes stand in front of my wardrobe and go, and I'm not big on clothes or fashion, right? What colour, where are we going with this? But actually that's the space we then become invited into. And it's not just about our wardrobe. It's about our lives. It's about our jobs. It's about when we look at that space, that vacuum, when we really embrace that, we find that actually there's a motivation. There's a new light. It's a little bit like the dark space of the womb. That's where the babies grow, right? Wow. The dark space. The babies grow in the dark. The lilies grow with their intrinsic root system underground. It's a biblical quote. Check it out. It's an absolutely awesome one. So what are we then motivated to do? What actually happens? And this is where I think it's really interesting to think about our driving force, our individual, which is why I've gone quite personal today. What is our individual driving force? It's different for all of us, yeah? And there's a way in for all of us. It's finding the way in. I remember going on a course and there was a guy that could identify every single bird call, and I was absolutely mesmerised. His way in to life, to healing, to understanding who he was, into understanding what was going on for him and his clients was through the bird call. Like, whoa, I'm not sure I can identify many bird calls. And I think that's really cool. So what is yours? What's your individual driving force? What's going on for you? Is it in your body? Do you feel stuff? Is that where your sensitivity to what are you invited to? What's your body saying? What are you hearing? Is there a tension in your shoulders? Is there a release in your head? Where's the energy? Where's the driving force? Is it in your mind? Is it in your thinking? Is it in your lists and your journaling and your understanding why? Is it in the buzz of your energy of, ooh, like that vibe? Love that vibe. I remember a young person I used to work with, she came into the room and she said, your vibe. And I was like, whoa. She just went, your vibe. That's all she said to me. And then she sat down and we started working. What's that about? I never found out what she actually meant. I didn't need to. She needed to share with me your vibe. And we do that with people, don't we? We hear and see and experience their vibe. What's going on for your vibe? What's going on in your spirit, in your soul, in your path, and your understanding of what that means? Do you need to know? Is that a thing for you? Or actually, are you more about the mind? Are you more about the body? Are you more about whatever you're about? The bird call, the bird song, the bird cry. Because being motivated brings us from a place of that despair, that lack, and it invites us to a place not necessarily of behaviour and action, which we ordinarily think, January, we're being called to do stuff and, make New Year's resolutions. But actually, what's it about? What's it about? That it would be my invitation to you to think about what's it really about for you. I always have, so growing up at my senior school, we had this PE teacher called Mr. Smith, and he was, as my nan would say, a bit of a hottie. And yeah, Mr. Smith, he was, and he would always say, he'd say these things in PE, like legs up and, what would it be like? What would it be like to get to the other side of it? And various other things that I don't think I actually even cognitively think about. But when I'm exercising, when I'm playing any sport, his voice, his presence is there as a motivating force. And if I tune into that, I smile. And if I'm smiling, everything changes about what I'm doing, and it no longer becomes arduous, but it becomes about what I want it to be. And it's interesting what we hear, what we experience, and what we then do with that. And so the invitation is to think about what's actually going on, because we live in a really different place to what we lived in 2 years ago, right? We always do. Everything's always changing. In an ever-changing world, some things never change, but everything is always changing too, okay? So make sense of that. We no longer have some of the outlets that would usually motivate us, the Friday night drinks. We're working at home much more. We are restricted and have fears and anxieties about things that we never thought we would experience, To me, pandemic was a board game, a bloody good one, yeah? And now it's much different, much more of what we negotiate in our everyday worlds, in all different ways and all different experiences. And how we work that through, how we work through working with the laundry pile behind us, how we work through and make sense. And as humans, we are awesomely good at this. We are all awesomely good, and we all need to say, Yes, 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 to being grateful for what we've given to ourselves to work through all of what we've done. And I think it's really interesting to see how we work through the boredom, the despair, the hopelessness into a more motivated space. Because even if you've been in it for a really, really long time, even if you're finding it really trudgery, there are ways in, there are ways through, there are voices that you will hear, there are motivating factors, there is permission, there is an invitation. There will always be contradictions. There will always, and that's what makes it interesting, right? That's what makes life a parable, because that's the story. That's the understanding of getting deeper into it. But this time that we now embrace, this time of February the 1st, we get to see the new light. We get to see more light coming. We get to see the beginning of spring, the beginnings. And beginnings, it's also a new moon. So new intentions, new moon, new intentions. And yeah, it's such an interesting place. But it can also be such a pressure. It reminds me of, we're going on a bit today. It reminds me of the fact that there's a celebration called Candlemas, which is celebrated in the Church of England, but also in other traditions. And it's important to kind of, if you're interested, check it out, because it's an interesting ritual that happened 40 days after Mary gave birth to Jesus, and it was his presentation at the temple. And it was a ritual. It's described as a ritual, and we don't so much have rituals nowadays. But actually, what's it like to have rituals? Rituals of presentation, and sometimes that can be a huge pressure, right? Because my home is not always a show home and able to host, but is it? Does it matter? What's the pressure? What's the complexity? What is it to show up? What is it to show up real? I talk a lot about that, but I think it starts with showing up to understand what the invitation is for us, what the invitation is when we're bored, what the invitation is in our driving force, and what we want to see from that new light, because we can see lots of things when the lights are on. There's lots of things around us. There's lots of things in us. There's lots of people around. But actually, how do we then choose? How do we then bless ourselves and welcome in what we really want to embrace? It's a bit like choosing our fashion statement. It's a bit like choosing our friends. It's a bit like choosing our partners. It's a bit like choosing our pets or our flowers in our garden. What do we choose, though, on a deeper level for our body, our mind, our soul, our spirit, our vibe? What is that really like for you? Which voices do you want to hear? I also had a French teacher who just constantly told me I couldn't speak French. Bonjour. That's French. That's sarcasm too. What is it we want to embrace? What is it we want to really bring forward for this new lambing season, this new light? So that's Direct Joy for today. I hope that was helpful and shone some light onto some of the complexities that come up through boredom and when it's really hard to motivate ourselves. Bear in mind that also can show up as a symptom of low mood and depression and anxiety, and this stuff is not solo, right? All of these direct joys are not solo. They're not to be taken as one thing. We all link in. We are all, one basically, and holistic, and that's really important to me that message is out there too, because we have a village of mental health and we have a village of people around us, and if you're feeling that's tough for you at the moment, or someone that's feeling tough for you and you need more than just some direct joy, get in contact. If I'm not the person, I know people that can be, but reach out. It's really important to reach out if you need to. February can be dark, so the light's coming, and the darkest hour is the hour before dawn. So remember that when you're feeling bored or despairing, because that does mean the light's coming. Okay. Wishing you all so much love, peace and joy and happiness, and yeah, just get out in the fresh air if you can. And I look forward to, if I've got a topic, seeing you next week. So no topic at the moment. Bring me your ideas. Sending you so much love, and I look forward to seeing you all soon.